Hello guys, welcome back to the crew calling all the units. February 12th, 2016. That's when I started playing this game. So I'm playing it for about 1.5 years. And very often you get the questions around, well, which is a good car and which is the best car and what car do you drive? And I thought, well, I will have a look at the mileage and see what is going on. What cars have I been using and so on. So top 3 in the different specs. Let's have a look at that. And then yeah, you can sort of determine which kind of player you are if you do that. I found out. There are a few side notes though. First of all, before the April 2016 patch, the bikes were kinda OP. As soon as they came up with Wild Run in December 2015, we suddenly had bikes and yeah, they were kinda OP, and that will also show in the mileage that I've done on some of those bikes. But let's start with the full stocks. Surprisingly, at number 3 is this Alfa Romeo 8C. I do not have a certain reason for that, why it is at number 3, because the only thing that I come up with is that it's in alphabetic order on the list or something in your headquarters. It's on the first page, and the first car is the Abarth. I also have like a couple of 100 kilometers in that thing. Don't know why, but now that I think of it, let's have a quick look if I can find it here. It's a pretty long list, of course, the full stocks, because I'm thinking this is 200 kilometers that I have on this thing. Let's have a look on the Abarth. 158. Okay, so it is less. So the 8C at number 3. At number 2, yeah, for obvious reasons I guess, is that the fastest car in full stock. Pretty simple. But where is it? Somewhere down the bottom, I guess. Usually is. You need to find a car in that list. I hope they improve that for sure in the Groove 2, but I think they will, because I already saw like complete new overlay where you can immediately find at least the brands first, or the makes, and then you can select your vehicle. That's already an improvement. Now you get like a random list and you have to look for all these cars. Koenigsegg Agera R, 308 kilometers I have in that thing, and meanwhile we have the Nightbug. Why not? And the reason is pretty obvious. This is the fastest full stock car in the game. It can do 400 kilometers plus, even 450 plus or 460 plus. I think you go downhill or have some slipstream or something like that. So that's one of those cars, if you do take a full stock, that you mess about in. It can go over 400 kilometers. Here we go, we are already past the 400 kilometers. But yeah, handling, brakes, of course not that good, seeing it is a full stock. But that is probably why I have it at number 2. But yeah, 300 kilometers, not even that much, considering 1.5 years playing. But yeah, I'm not cruising around much, and other than that, these full stock cars are basically, yeah, I don't even know why they're in the game. There are a few awards linked to the full stock cars, and then you have to do that. So I have a lot of these full stocks. I have like 9-10 kilometers on it, because you had to do for the award things, you had to drive 5 miles or 8.01 kilometers in all of these things to get a certain award. At least in the 40 original cars. You need to do 5 miles in those things to get the full stock, one of those full stock awards. At number 1, 337, almost 338 kilometers. The Nissan Skyline GTR R34. The reason I have that at number 1 is most likely it was like the first car that I bought. Of course you start with a starter's car, and for me that was the 370Z. But I have been looking at the numbers, and it is in the top 5 somewhere though, but it's not top 3. So for some reason this was the first car that I bought, because I think it also probably the reason why I bought it next to my starter's car is that it also has all the different specs, just like the starter cars do. That's probably why I got this thing. And then of course also for obvious reasons, which we will show later. Then we go to the street cars, and yeah, at number 3, although it is a combined number 3, by that I mean the Mini Cooper, in this case in Street Edition. I have about 1600 kilometers on that thing, but it is at number 3 because I've also... what is the other one? Because there are 2, you have the Street Edition, but I also have the normal one, and I also have 1150 kilometers on this, which almost makes it about 3000 kilometers that I've done in the Mini Cooper. And the reason for that is pretty simple. When I was going through the PvP, different ranks from Bronze 4, worked my way up to Platinum 1, mostly used the Mini Cooper in Street Spec, and that was at number 3. At number 2, same story sorta. 3110 kilometers almost. Well, now I have it after driving 100 meters. 3110 kilometers in, again, the Nissan Skyline, and that is also probably the reason why it was number 1 at full stock, because I needed to get that car as soon as possible, because it's one of the fastest in Street Spec, next to the Mini. So I have been using the Mini Cooper and the Skyline both in PvP and such things, mainly, because not so much in Summit related stuff. Although I am a competitive player, as very well will be shown in the other specs that you will find out. But as I said, the bikes were kinda OP in the beginning, and the result of that is that I have 3471 kilometers on the KTM 450 street bike. Although I never driven around in it much in free drive. But yeah, it was kinda OP. It smoked the Skylines, and it smoked the Minis and the BRZs in Street Spec before the April 2016 patch, and it was kinda the OP bike, not only in Street for that matter, also in other specs. And that's why this is the number 1 in Street Spec for me. Obviously after the patch they did with the handling, April 2016, I switched to a cars, and that's why the Skyline and the Mini are 2 and 3 for me. Moving up to dirt. And on dirt, here we go again, although for different reasons, but at number 3, (3,675 kilometers) on the BMW 1200 bike. And the reason for that is not so much for PvP, because there wasn't it wasn't that OP there, but it is kinda the best option we had in stunt races. It was the more stable one out of the bikes, and so for Summit stunt races this was the thing to do, the stunts with in dirt spec, the BMW, and that's why I have 3,700 kilometers in, and that's why it's number 3 in dirt spec. But then a bit later, throughout 2016 somewhere, they brought the Ducati Monster in dirt spec, and that was even more stable. You could handle it way better, and it is just the best dirt bike to use now for stunt race in summits. Result of that, 3,190 kilometers on it. So that is at number 2. So once again, a bike. And to my own surprise, once we go all over the specs later, you will see that, well, it turns out that I'm kinda of a bike guy apparently. To my own surprise, although I'm more of a car guy, but yeah, not according to the numbers. And at number 1, quite a bit outstanding. You would say, well, the Rough RT, I will quickly take it out, let's have a look. 2,860 kilometers. That is mainly for PvP reasons, because it's the best dirt spec out there. But that is only at number 4 in my dirt ranking, but I took it out here because otherwise people might wonder why is that not at number 1 in dirt, but it isn't. Because once again, over 4,000 kilometers, the KTM 450. Also here in the beginning it was the only bike we could use. And then they came up with stunt races, and yeah, we tested this thing. And yeah, it was not that good, but yeah, you tested with it anyway, so you did quite some kilometers or mileage on it doing stunt races. But then later turned out that the BMW was the better choice, and then later the Monster spec. But also in PvP, the bikes were OP till April 2016, and this was the thing to get. It was pretty cheap. It was the cheapest bike in the St. Louis dealer, I think. And it was OP in street, in dirt, and also in raid, as you will see in a bit. So this was a pretty good choice to get. And that's why it is number 1 in dirt for me, although according to the mileage. For the cars, it is the Rough RT though. Then we go to performance spec, and there we have like, yeah, a strange number 3. I'm still thinking, why is that at number 3, but yeah, it is what it is. The numbers do not lie. And it's all the way down the list, I think, for the simple reason that I think that I put this, one of these things, yeah, it's one of these cars that I put down to $12.99 again. The Ford Raptor SV, the F-150 SVT Raptor. And why on earth is that on number 3? Well, we had to use it in a couple of brand time attacks in the summit. And also for this reason. It can wall ride, it does not lose speed, and that also means that you can use it in certain speed traps where you can only use Americans, or where you can only use utility. And for some of those speed traps you needed this thing to do the wall ride. And that is yeah, sort of the first proof that I'm kind of a competitive aka summit player, and that is why this thing is at number 3 for sure. That can only be the reason. At number 2, once again, might be a surprise to some, that this thing, the Pagani Huayra, is not at number 1. And that is mainly because, yeah, occasionally you use it in a time attack, although those are usually specific requirements, USA only or Asian, yeah, then you cannot use this thing, of course. But other than that, I mainly use it in PvP, of course, because it's, yeah, next to the LaFerrari, which is at number 4 or 5 in my mileage list for performance. And so that's why this is up here. 6,290 kilometers I've done in this thing. But it's not number 1. That might surprise some. But yeah, if you're into PvP, then probably this will be your number 1 car in performance with the most mileage on it. But once again, the bikes were OP at a certain point. And the result of that, although the BMW has the best handling, the S1000 racing bike, but you also have speed traps in the Summit, and before April 2016 also OP in performance spec in multiplayer races. So over 7,000 kilometers for the Kawasaki Ninja H2. And that's why this is my number one in performance spec. So once again, it's a bike. And yeah, it's all kind of logic in a way, because of course I started this game February, and then you sort of grind a bit, get some parts, try to get cars at $12.99 at that point. And then yeah, also that explains why this bike has so many mileage, is because yeah, I did the grinding for performance parts with this bike. Other than that, you use it in speed traps. Even today, it is still next to the Hurricane, the performance spec with the highest top speed. And if we cannot use the Hurricane, then we still use the bikes because they have a better acceleration. And it was also OP in PvP till April 2016. So, number one in performance for me, the Ninja bike. Then we go to rate, and that is sort of, yeah, more or less, not really, but more or less a copy of the Dirt spec. In that way that at number 3 is not a bike, but considered to be the best rate spec overall. The Ford Mustang GT 2011. 2,612 kilometers I have on this thing, and that is mainly because of PvP racing. Then you just take this thing out. Does not crash, it flies all over the place, but it just keeps on going. It's not the one with the highest top speed in raid, but top speed does not that matter. It's not like a speed trap or anything in raid spec, at least not that I'm aware of. Never saw that. So and they are just copying last year's qualifiers now, so you are also not gonna get it anymore. So at number 3, the Mustang, mainly because of PvP reasons. Didn't spend that much time in free ride with it to begin with. And then, yeah, we come back to the bikes for sort of for the same reasons as the Dirt specs. 5,163 kilometers on the BMW bike, and that is because for a long time this was your best option for just like in Dirt, till they brought the monster of the Ducati. But they didn't bring a raid spec of the Ducati Monster, so the BMW was the best bike to use for Summit stunt races. And that is why this thing is up there at number 2. 5,163 kilometers. And at number 1, once again, for the third time, next to Street, next to Dirt, also in raid spec, the KTM 450. Not so much for the stunt races, but it was OP in raid spec PvP multiplayer races till April, till they patched the bikes. And even now you can still use it in certain areas of the map where doesn't depend so much on the handling. Yeah, then this thing is still pretty fast in raid. 5,271 kilometers. So once again, a good bike if you consider before April 2016, of course. But yeah, number 1 in street, number 1 in dirt, number 1 in raid mileage that I've done with these things. So probably a wise choice, and I think it only costed like 40,000 bucks or something in the dealers. It wasn't the first bike that I also bought. That also explains why the it's number 1 in the mileage in 3 different specs. And we go to circuit spec. At number 3, once again, the bikes were kinda OP in performance, but definitely also in circuit spec. And then you needed, well, it depended on the track. If you needed good acceleration and handling, you ended up with the BMW S1000 racing bike again. 5,508 kilometers I have on this thing. And that's mainly because of the PvP racing, because this thing has a pretty good handling. Good acceleration. I think it was one of the best accelerating vehicles in circuit spec to begin with. Although I think that if you do a mile drag, which I've done in the Driving All Car series, I believe there was one, the new Monster, Ducati Monster, I believe it's even faster acceleration wise, but other than that, yeah, it cannot really compete with this thing. If you need a bit of speed, acceleration, brakes, handling combination, then you're probably gonna end up with the BMW. But yeah, sometimes you also need speed, for speed traps, but also for racing itself in PvP. So at number 2, once again, a bike. 12,105 kilometers. Again, just like in performance, but in performance it was at number 1. It's only at number 2 here. And the reason for that is it does not handle that well. I have to go off throttle to take the corners, which is easier to do with the BMW bike. But you have the speed traps as well, and you're still doing this now. Also here, when they came up with calling all units, the Hurricane surpassed it even in circuit spec. They are sort of equal in performance, 450 kilometers an hour top speed, but in circuit spec that's not the case. This thing can do 460, but the Hurricane can do 465. But also now, if we cannot use the Hurricane, then we still use the Ninja in speed trap events. And before April, it was the OP bike to use in PvP next to the BMW. That's why they are 2 and 3. But at number 1, no, I haven't put it back yet. I've been doing the circuit tests for the comparison test, but normally that car should be on the bottom of the list at 1299 because it's better at 1299 than at 1497. Number 1 in circuit spec. 14,590 kilometers, and yeah, it's considered to be the best overall. The Ferrari 458. Best overall in circuit spec, and it's also your best shot if you go to PvP. Not always the case. If you have a track with long straights and top speed comes into play, this thing is not that superb in that way that it can only do 439, and like I said, cars like the Hurricane, the Gallardo, the Stelline, they all go faster. But yeah, once a few corners show up, you come into trouble with those cars. While not really a case. Best combination: acceleration, brakes, handling, and speed is kinda okay. It's a bit slower than some of the other cars, but still okay. And that is mainly for PvP reasons that this is number 1 in circuit for me. 14,590 kilometers. Then what are we gonna do then? Yeah, the police cars. Let's start with that now. That is a bit, yeah, not so interesting. I did not like the calling all units expansion very much, and the reason is that number 3, only 505 kilometers. The Nissan GTR. Why is this at number 3? For the simple reason, this was one of the first police cars you could get. And if you were a long-term player in this game, you actually got this for free. If you bought Calling All Units and you already had the Wild Run, then you got this car for free, so it was sort of your first police car. That's why I have 500 kilometers in it, doing a couple of great missions and such. And the same reason goes for the Gallardo. At number 2, 508 kilometer, which is only a few kilometers more, and that is for a long time this was the only circuit spec available in police, and that is why I probably used it well, a bit. I mean, compared to some of the numbers on the other cars, what was it, 16,600 kilometers in the Ferrari 458 in circuit spec, only 500 kilometers in this police car. Because in my opinion, the Calling All Unit police things is basically a bunch of bullshit. Corrupt expansion, other than the fact that we got a few new cars. But the police things itself, it's how the thing is bugged, and the roadblocks are a joke. I mean, one car is there in a barrier and that's supposed to be a roadblock. Not really. What do we have at number 1? For the police cars, although probably not even that more. How much do we have? 510 kilometers in this thing. Bottom of the list, of course, because I brought it down to 1299. 540 kilometers, so about 30 kilometers more than the Huayra. So if I combine those three top 3 police cars that I used, if I combine the mileage on those things, then I have about 1500 kilometers in those things done, which is pretty much a joke if you compare it to some of the other cars that I used. But yeah, it's just looking at the numbers and came up with these lists, and these is the top 3. With all the other police cars, either they are newer, like the Skyline in street spec is probably the best in street spec now in police, but I barely use it because it's not that long in the game and I'm not using police cars anymore. So which leaves us with the extreme specs, the Wild Run, and that mostly has to do with with summit events. At number 3, surprisingly, and I will explain that in a second why it's at number 3, because it's not even that good. But I needed a drift car, was going through the missions and all that, and so I got a couple of cars at 1299, and so next up was the drift. And that is the reason why this car, the Corvette C7 Stingray, why this thing is at number 3 with 875 kilometers. And did I use this in the summit? Nope, not at all. The reason this is in my top 3 for the drift cars, although it's not that far behind, at number 4 is the Viper, which I do use for American qualifiers. But the reason that this thing is on there, this was my first drift car, and basically, don't know why, I just thought, oh, it looks okay, and I bought this one. But yeah, turned out it has 7 gears, and 7 gear drift cars are not that good in this game. But yeah, I grinded with the parts for it, so that's why it's at number 3. Number 2 and number 1 as well are more obvious reasons. Number 2, the BMW M5 with almost 1400 kilometers. You might say, well, that's a big, white and heavy car. Yeah, but it is a pretty good drift car. Although not on keyboard settings, what I am now, but because it's so heavy, and once you get it into a drift, you sort of slide through the corners, and that's why it's probably so good. So you can, sort of like with the Viper, you can get long drifts with it, and that is always a good thing to score points in a drift trial. But yeah, how much is it? 1380 kilometers, something like that, which is not that big of a deal if you compare it with the number 1 Considered to be the best car overall for drifting and also used the most, I guess. 3,915 kilometers for the Mazda RX-7, by far the easiest, the smallest, the lightest, the easiest to control as well, so by far the best drift car in this game. Even on keyboard settings you can make this thing drift. So that's almost like triple, well, not triple, but at least more than double the amount of mileage on it than on the M5. And the Stingray, that was just for personal reasons, for the simple reason that I bought that one as first and I grinded with that to get all the drift parts in the tuner. That brings us two more categories, the monsters. At number 3, the Abarth, and the main reason that is at number 3 is Mountain States. The Mountain States arena is well, it works best with the Abarth for me. You can use something like the 370Z or a Skyline or whatever, but this is a small car and you have many ramps here, many combinations to do. So you can flip it, land it, flip it again, all in, and that's a bit trickier with some of the bigger cars. You have like a combination here to do with like, not a problem with this little Abarth thing, and that's why it's at number 3. Well, although at number 3, 4,600 kilometers almost on it. And now we go to the 1299 cars. I put them back to 1299 because I find them better at 1299 as 1497. Let me look at the numbers. Yep. Number 2, the Ford Raptor, 5,181 kilometers. This car is at 1299 full acceleration, so 11 parts on it with full acceleration bonus. And that is not so much for these monster arenas because it's not even that good in it. So why do you use it? Well, for scramble tests, raceline skill tests, things like that, you're gonna end up with this Raptor. If it's not on a dirt road, then sometimes the dirt spec can be better, which is another reason why, for instance, the Monster Ducati is at number 2 in dirt. You can also use that on raceline skill tests, so that's also the reason why that was there. And at number 1, once again, into the top 3, the Nissan Skyline. The Raptor has the highest top speed, I believe, in monster spec, not that it matters that much. But the Skyline is the best sort of overall, I guess. You can use it on certain skill tests, you can use it on the most of the monster arenas. It's also next to the Abarth, one of these that can easily take this jump up here, where if you do this in a summit thing, there is 5,000 points on top of that thing. And but yeah, you can have situations like this with this car. Turn it back up, and that's why I usually take the Abarth here in this arena. It's smaller and you have less of those rollover things going on. Then we come to, better get to a road maybe. The last category, of course, the drag cars. Now, I think it was sort of with the same patch that they did that when they patched the bikes in April 2016. They also came up with wheel settings. I will quickly change that. Manual. Put that in half or something, and that to 0, that a bit back, and we change it to wheel. Although you play with the keyboard or with the gamepad, you can change it to wheel settings, and that makes it also easier to drive the drag cars. And so not only do we use them in the drag trial, but we also use them all over the place for skill tests, for precision, for slalom, for speed skill tests, for the drag trial itself in the thing. At number 3, the Ford Mustang. Why is that thing at number 3? If you do a solo run with this thing, it's not even that good. That's true. But if you do this in a team with Slipstream, this is the car that can get the highest top speed. So if I would have a team in front of me here, then I would, for drag that is, then I would actually reach 655 kilometers an hour you can get out of this thing. And that is one of the reasons why this thing is in my top 3 of most used drag cars. You play around with a team with Slipstream where this thing comes kinda exceeds. On long drag trials you're gonna end up with this thing because it gets the highest top speed out of it in Slipstream. So how much is it? 5,637 kilometers I have on it. Before we had wheel settings, we had to do all these kind of skill tests, like slalom, and then you could occasionally try it on keyboard settings, in my case, or on gamepad settings, and then you needed something with good acceleration and also with decent handling, and then you came with you showed up with this thing, the RT35. 6,600 kilometers I have on it, and that's mainly because occasionally I try to do, oh my god, seriously, why not? Here we go, roadblock, ladies and gentlemen. 3 cars, a little barrier, and on both sides of the roadblock you can pass them like anytime. I mean, where are the SWAT teams? Let's go into 5th gear, 4th gear, whatever. I am on wheel settings, not that ideal though. And we escaped, yeah. That's pretty obvious. You're gonna escape in a drag car from the stupid police. Welcome to calling all units. So, 6,620 kilometers. Which brings us to the obvious number 1. Not only number 1 in drag, but number 1 overall in my mileage, and with an extreme 52,000 kilometers. And that kind of proves that I was more of a competitive player in this game, involved in summits and stuff, because that is what we did. And then we used this car for slaloms, for precision skill tests, for speed skill tests, for the drag trial itself. If you do it solo or even in a team on short tracks, you're gonna end up with the rough CTR3. And it's kinda to the extreme. If you consider that I took 16,600 kilometers out of the Ferrari 458, then you can sort of conclude that I spent more time in the summit than in PvP, which is also the truth. And the numbers also show that. 16,000 kilometers in the Ferrari, 52,000 kilometers in this rough CTR3. Something different. I was going over these cars and doing some stuff with it, and I thought, well, why not have a look at this? And that also immediately answers a few questions which you often get in the comments of the description of your videos, and then you get like, which cars do you like and which cars do you drive? And well, as I've shown here, all the different specs, the top 3, the most kilometers on it, and that also means that I use them the most. I don't even like drag, and for some reason this is my most used car with 52,000 kilometers. A quick look around on the top 3 of the most used cars for me. I will see you guys in the next one, and bye for now.